Good evening, everybody. Welcome to St. Charles. My name is Karen. I'm the pastoral associate here, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, who we're very excited to have. I want to also say thank you so much to Lauren for being such a phenomenal organizer. She's just incredible, so thank you for that. I think that the confusion and even the fear about the state of our world right now can be really overwhelming. At least it is for me. And I don't think I'm alone when I often wonder, what can I do to make a more positive contribution to what's going on locally and globally both? And as I work here, and I hear stories all the time about people struggling to have compassion towards friends and family, and that is a hard enough job, let alone bringing love into this world that is struggling so much right now. I read Scarlett's book. In your book, you say that anger is a major issue in our world, and I have had experiences with that, right? You're in a parking lot and you slightly bump somebody's car, and oh my goodness. It's just so close to the surface that you barely scratch the surface, and it just comes sort of roaring out at you. It's felt lately like the world is sort of coming apart at the seams, and even Mother Nature is not too happy. And in the face of so many global and catastrophic events, I don't know about you all, but I can feel pretty small, and we can have sort of a temptation to want to just close our eyes and wish the whole thing would go away, which it's not going to. I'm finding just personally that reading your story and your book, I want to say that Scarlett's story is not going to let us do that tonight. And I love it. Apparently neither is Jesse, who continues to have an impact on this world a lot of years after his physical presence isn't here anymore. If you've read Scarlett's book, you know that Jesse continued to make himself known in some pretty incredible ways for a pretty long time. And I know the book is going to be on sale after she's done speaking, and I highly recommend it. I'm guessing that Scarlett and Jesse and JT were always a pretty unusual people, just in their family and in their nature. Probably most of us tonight would have never met them. We would have never known how unique and special they were. We would have never known kind of the impact that they have on their world, except for the awful things that happened at Sandy Hook in December of 2012. I think it's a tribute to their extraordinary natures that even through the excruciating grief that they experienced, a greater love now walks the face of the planet. Several things that she says in her book really stand out to me, and just want to share a couple of them. One is, I won't be a prisoner of my pain. I will make my life count for something. I can't control what happens, but I can decide how I will respond. Love is a choice. I see Jesse as a martyr. His life and his death has produced so many powerful things in this world through the organization that we're going to hear about tonight. In a sense, Scarlett and JT, I feel, are also martyrs because they too lost a life that they thought that they were going to have. That life kind of died. Thankfully for them, as well as for us, our God is a God of life. And so he has brought a completely different life for them out of the ashes, sort of an Easter Sunday out of the darkness of their Good Friday. To me, the Choose Love Foundation is really a clear message that even in the face of death, our God really is about life, the choice to love, no matter what the cost. Scarlett has been called to carry this message to our world and to us tonight, and we sorely need to hear what she has to say. Tonight she's going to ask us to take our own place with her in the journey that she has begun to bring love into this world, whatever our small corner of it might be. And I know that we need to say yes to this challenge tonight. So with that, I give you Scarlett.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming tonight. There's a reason that you all came. Do you believe that? So you were called to spend your evening here with me, and I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be able to share my story with you. Thank you very much for coming. So in the next hour or so, I'm going to be talking about how incredibly powerful each and every one of us are. Right? We have the power to change the world. I didn't necessarily know that before December 14th, 2012, but I was put in a position and made it a big decision, and have learned that in the last 4.5 years, that we are the ones that are going to change the world. That we can't wait for someone else to fix what's going on. We have the power to do that. And I'm going to prove that to you tonight. And I'm going to ask you to join me in the movement to choose love. I'm going to go through how it started, and I'm hopefully going to empower you to want to join me in being the solution to what is going on in the world. I think a lot of times, as you were saying, all this stuff is happening, right? All this stuff is happening around us, and we feel like we have no control. It's all happening out here to us, right? But in reality, it's how we perceive what is happening. That's where the real power is, okay? We have an experience, and then we have our thoughts and feelings about that experience. And our power and freedom lies right in the middle. How we choose to experience that, what our thoughts and feelings are about that. So I'm going to go into that a little bit more. And actually, so we'll just start right in. This chapter in my life, remember, I wasn't doing this prior to December 14th, 2012. This chapter in my life started 4.5 years ago when my 6-year-old son was murdered by a former student at Sandy Hook Elementary School, alongside 19 of his classmates in 2 classrooms and 6 educators in one of the worst mass murders in U.S. history. That was a day that I had a lot of decisions to make, and basically I realized it boiled down to 2 choices. I could be a victim for the rest of my life, giving my personal power to Adam Lanza, the man who murdered my son. Or I could take my part of the responsibility. I could be part of the solution and not be a victim. I could take back my personal power. Something that really helped me was my 12-year-old son. So Jesse had an older brother, JT, who was 12 years old at the time. And I knew that JT was going to be watching every move that I made. I was his role model. And I knew that what my choices were, the ones that I made, were going to determine his future. And I knew that I had to make good choices because I wanted both of us to go forward, to have a good life, to have joy. And that's just a choice. And not all of us realize that that is a choice. And actually, I'm going to walk you through my process of making that choice. What I was heartened to find, and what I'm also going to go into, is that there's a solution for all the issues that we have in our society. It sounds too easy. It sounds too simple, as Kelly likes to say. It actually is simple. It's really not that easy, but it's pretty simple. And it's called social emotional learning. I didn't create it. It was already around. Social emotional learning teaches kids how to have healthy relationships, how to have deep and meaningful connections. It teaches them skills and tools that help them manage their emotions. It teaches them how to label their emotions, and how to cope with difficult situations. Social emotional learning has decades of research that show that it proactively prevents violence, substance abuse, depression, suicide, mental illness. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, too, because it is actually, I've been going around saying, it's a solution to the things that we're seeing in our world, but in the last 6 months, traveling around the world, I've been saying it's the solution, and I've dedicated my life to it. So I'm driving in the car the other day up to a presentation at a school, and I'm thinking, wow, dedicating your life to something, you got to really believe in it. And I do, because I believe that it's the solution. So now I go around and I say, and by the way, if anyone has a better solution, raise your hand, because I want to be part of it, right? But until somebody does, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. And I want to hear from you. You know, we're going to have a question and answer later. I want to hear what you think about this, because this is really important. Social emotional learning is the #1 way to have a safe school environment. Okay? We know we have now, since Sandy Hook Elementary, we have school resource officers, right, that are protecting our school. They protect it kind of from the outside in, right? Social emotional learning protects us from the inside out, because it teaches us how to be kind and loving and connected. Social emotional learning is also the most proactive and preventative mental health initiative that we have, period. It's the #1 way to give kids the 21st century life skills essential for today. It sounds like I'm selling something, right? Everything I do is free, so it's the best job in the world, let me tell you. So I learned a lot of life lessons from the tragedy. You can imagine, how are we shaped and molded as adults? Is it through good times when everything's going our way? Or is it when we face difficulties and obstacles that we find out what we're really made of, right? I learned so much from the tragedy, and tonight I want to give you guys some of the lessons that I learned. Hopefully that you never have to go through anything that I went through, but you can get the benefit of some of the lessons that I've learned. And just kind of as a brief overview, some of the most important ones you may already know, but I didn't. We're all connected by the want and need to love and be loved. All of us as human beings, we look at each other, we look a little different, but guess what? We're really not all that different at all. We're all connected by the want and need to love and be loved. Love is as important as food and water. You know what they say in the refugee camps, where they're displaced from their homes, they have very little food and water, they have very meager education, they have almost nothing. And what do they talk about the aid workers? What do they talk to the aid workers about? Relationships, right? Love. Not their accommodations, but love. It's really important. It's the #1 important thing. And the other thing that I learned that I didn't know 4.5 years ago is that we're all just here to help one another. The beautiful thing about that, and actually there's science to back everything that I say up, by the way. I was at a barbecue the other night. I'm wearing a Choose Love shirt, and this guy across from me goes, "Oh, choose love, dude." I wonder if you're watching. And that's okay if you are, because I said, oh, wow, I think maybe in the 60s it was choose love, dude, but now there's so much science behind the benefits of choosing love. There's science behind every character value that we teach. And he was like, okay, I'm gonna go get a beer. But we're all just here to help one another. And the beautiful thing about that, which I didn't know, but I've recently researched in the last couple of years, is that all the love and healing that we give out, we get back. I think maybe that's why you see some mothers that have lost children that are pounding the pavement to make the world a better place. That's because some part of us knows that all the love that we're giving out, we're getting back. And it's healing us by healing others. All this billion-dollar industry, by the way, around what is your purpose in life, I can tell you what your purpose in life is. If you are doing something for others, if you're living your life in service, you've found your purpose. So this incredibly empowering concept of choice, if I could boil my whole experience down to one word, it would be choice. Because the fact of the matter is, we can't always choose what happens to us, right? I would never choose what happened to me. I don't care how many lessons I learned. But the bottom line is, we can always choose how we respond. And I feel confident up here saying this to you, we can always respond in love. Every single time, regardless of what happens to us. Our freedom and power lies in our ability to choose our response in every situation, and we can always respond in love. It's always a choice. We don't always realize that it's a choice, right? Every interaction we have is a choice. I could choose to be very kind to you. Did you see me waving to you over there? Or I could choose not to be kind to you. But it's a choice, right? We don't always make the right choices, kids or adults, right? But it's always a choice. What an empowering lesson, right? And every choice that we make is based on one of two things, fear or love. That actually is the basis for every single choice that we make on a daily basis. What's the most important thing that we do? It's basing our choices out of love. You know, I had a really incredible experience after the tragedy. It was at my mom's house. It was before I actually went back to my little farmhouse. I'm sitting on her couch, and I'm feeling as low as a human being can feel. In fact, I had this thought that I was going to dissolve into dirt. I really thought I was going to die. I felt so low after losing my son. And all of a sudden, I had this incredible lightness of being. It was a really weird dichotomy of feelings, right? I felt really low because I was mourning the loss of my son, yet I felt this lightness of being. It was like the best feeling I'd ever felt in my life. And I thought, what the heck is that? And then I realized, for the first time in my entire life, I was without fear. I had no fear. I wasn't afraid of dying. I'd been through, hopefully, something that's the worst that any parent could ever go through, and I had nothing to fear, and it felt really good. And then all of a sudden, I was kind of given a life review, and I saw all the choices that I'd made in my lifetime, all the major choices, and all of them, all my jobs, all my relationships, they'd all been made out of fear. And I was given this wisdom. There was no judgment. There wasn't anything like, if you had made your choices out of love, you wouldn't be sitting in the seat you're sitting in, right? There was no judgment because I knew why I had made every single one of those decisions. And by the way, they all led me up to the point where I could be doing this. But I was given this wisdom that if you make your choices based in love, they not only positively impact you, but they positively impact the world. And I made a decision right then and there to base all my choices in love. I actually wake up every morning still. I'm going to make all my choices based in love so that they impact me positively, but also those around me. And through the ripple effect, they make the world a better place. We have that power. I thought about what caused the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary. What caused it? And actually, the whole movement to choose love started at Jesse's funeral. When I got up and I spoke, and I said, it was an angry thought in Adam Lanza's head at some point that started the whole tragedy. And I pictured him as a little boy having angry thoughts without the tools or nurturing environment to deal with those thoughts. We know through science that every single thought we have impacts us on a cellular level. We also know, by the way, the adults, maybe not the kids quite yet, you don't have quite as many. Kids have thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts every day. Do you feel like you do? Yeah, right? Because it's almost a constant stream. Guess what? Adults have 60 to 80,000 thoughts every single day. Kids, can you believe that? No, it's crazy, right? That's a lot of thoughts. That's a lot of thoughts that go through our heads every single day. And do you know what science tells us? Science tells us that 70 to 80% of those thoughts are negative. They're angry, non-productive, and they don't serve us. It's a lot of thoughts. And when we know that every thought that we have impacts us on a cellular level, that means it's impacting us physically, in our bodies, mentally, and emotionally. It makes you want to be mindful of your thoughts because they're impacting your future, right? And everyone around you. So I asked everyone that day, I told them, the amazing thing to me is that a thought can be changed. That means that this could have been changed any way along the process, right? So I asked everybody that day to please start thinking about what you think about. I said, everybody's been asking, what can we do? I said, there is something that you can do. You can take one angry thought a day and turn it into a loving thought. That's how the whole movement to choose love started. Changing one angry thought into a loving thought every day. I said, by doing that, you'll make yourself feel better. You'll positively impact those around you. And through the ripple effect, you'll make this a more peaceful and loving world. Do you think that you could do that? Yeah. Yeah, one a day, right? So, oh my gosh, I sent people off with that. And about a week later, they started giving me feedback that one simple act completely changed their life. Is that amazing? So I knew that I was onto something. That was the beginning of the movement to choose love. Because everything starts with our thoughts. Everything. It's our thoughts about our experiences, right? That's what shapes our feelings about it, which then become our actions. But it all starts in our head. And we have total control over that. It takes a little bit of effort, takes maybe a little bit of training, but we do. That's the beautiful thing. We have so much more power than we realize in our lives. This is really cool, and I'm still on thoughts, okay? This is called precognitive drawing. And this is a whole field of scientific study, by the way, when kids draw how they're going to die. This is actually in the book, right? But there's a little twist to this that's not in the book. This is what we call the angel and the bad man. So the FBI took Jesse's personal belongings out of his desk and put them in a box chronologically, right? So Jesse drew this a few days before he died. We call this the angel and the bad man. Now, he never drew anything like this before. And it's in pencil, right? And if you look a little closer, you see that this is the angel. Now, if you really look at it, and I'm sorry that you guys are kind of far away, you can look at it on my computer closer later if you want. The angel's in the shape of a 14. Do you see that? Jesse died on the 14th. The angel's also in the shape of a bullet. That's what took him to heaven. Little smile on his face. He's facing the shooter. That's exactly how he died. This is the bad man, okay? So you see there's a blockhead, and you see that he basically just took the pencil and he went, scratched it in, right? Does it look kind of angry? Okay. I'm going to blow up the head a little bit, and you're going to see two figures that emerge in the back of the head. Now, I don't think that he meant to draw these, okay? So on the far right, you see what looks like a demon-type figure. There's a black cloak, two black blunted wings, a little face, a ball cap, a hand. He's holding a gun, and this is a phallic symbol screwing down into the head, which in medieval times denotes evil. Can you guys see that? Can you see the figure? Can you kids see it? You can? It's this figure right here, right? So you see that that's in pencil mark, right? I don't think he was meaning to draw anything, right? But it did come out kind of like that. The most amazing figure is the one in front of that figure that could not have been drawn. It is not in pencil mark. It's a rubbing. And it's like an angelic figure, standing like this, and I'm going to point it out. There's a halo, a well-defined face, almost like a biblical-style gown with an arm coming down here and an arm out like that. Can you see it? Okay. So he couldn't have drawn that. This is a precognitive drawing. What does that mean? Okay, So we're in a church, right? So that could mean to those who are religious that, we have the two influences in our lives. We have an evil influence and we have a loving influence, right? And they were both always, always within us, right? But let's go back to thoughts about what we think, right? We also all have angry thoughts and we all have loving thoughts, right? Kids, yes, back there, yes, right? Even adults, we do too, right? We all have both those thoughts, and I love describing thoughts like this and the power that we have over them. The Tale of Two Wolves, the Cherokee parable. Kids, have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? Okay, I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to read you a little story. An old Cherokee's teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside of me, he said to the boy. It's a terrible fight, and it's between two wolves. One is evil. He's anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. He continued. The other is good. He's joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then he asked his grandfather, which wolf will win? The grandfather replied, the one you feed. Do you guys get what that means? Hey, do you get what that means? What does that mean?
It means if you use bad thoughts, then the bad ones will win. If you use good thoughts, then good thoughts will win.
That's exactly right. If you focus on bad thoughts, the bad thoughts win. If you focus on good thoughts, the good thoughts win. Exactly. Thank you. Very well explained. So I love this quote by Viktor Frankl. It's basically saying the same thing. Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He was a Nazi Germany concentration camp prisoner. He entered the prison with his family. His family were immediately taken and killed. He survived because he was a psychiatrist and they were going to use his degree. And I think he was in prison for about 4 or 5 years, okay? He used that experience as an experiment, and he watched how people responded when they had everything taken from them. Remember, they had their families taken from them. They were starved. They were beaten and tortured. They were stripped of all their human dignity. But he watched and he saw that the one freedom that they had was how they chose to respond in that situation. And he found that the people that responded with love and compassion not only survived better, they survived longer, but they survived better. This is his quote, which I love. Between stimulus and response, between what happens to us and how we respond, there's a space. In that space lies our freedom and power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and freedom. That's pretty powerful, right? And if I link that back to my situation, I had my son murdered, and that was not a good situation. And I didn't control that, but I did control how I responded, and I did respond in love. This is kind of a more adult version. We're going to have this in our Choosing Love for parents, so I just thought I would show this slide. We have an experience, which is an emotion, right? We have an experience, and then we have our thoughts and feelings about that experience. And there's a gap in between, right? And we have a choice. We can have our experience, and then we can have an immediate reaction. We can just react to it like this, or we can mind the gap. We can think about it, and we can have a thoughtful response. That's where choosing love lies. That's when we choose love, in thoughtful response. So let's kind of look at some of the issues that we face. These are in our schools, but they're also in our society. It makes sense, right? They're in our schools, and then they're in our society. We have an epidemic of anxiety in our society, right? So The Child Mind Institute reports that 49.5% of our college-bound US youth will have had a diagnosable mental illness by the time they're 18. That jumps to 60% when they're 21. The majority of that diagnosis is anxiety. The average onset age for anxiety in the US is 6 years old. And 70% of those kids will not get professional help. So what does long-term anxiety that's not treated look like? It looks like everything that's in our society. It looks like substance abuse, depression, mental illness, incarceration, suicide. It looks like all the issues. What else? Trauma in our schools has increased. There was a groundbreaking study 20 years ago called the ACEs study, Adverse Early Childhood Experiences. They found that 1 in 5 kids is coming to school traumatized. There was a recent study in Connecticut that found that over 50% are coming to school traumatized. The world has changed. We know that bullying has actually increased in schools. Have you guys experienced bullying in your school? Little bit? Do you know somebody that has?
Yes.
Yeah? Where are some other kids? What about your school? Have you experienced, or you know somebody that has experienced bullying? Have you seen it? No? That's good. Oh, today? Yeah. Yeah. It's not okay. It's not okay. Yeah. So, despite our best efforts, by the way, I'm sorry. Yes.
I've been through bullying and a lot of other things. And I'm pretty traumatized today. I've been traumatized for a lot of years. It's kind of sad, and I'm feeling really scared in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So that's very courageous of you to speak out and talk about that today. Can we talk together after the presentation?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So you agree that bullying is an issue?
Bullying is a very bad issue. Everyone should not be thrown into it or thrown into a void of just sadness and depression and lots of other things. I have up to 10 stages of sadness, and I finally got back down to 4, and 4 is really, really settled right now. I used to be on 6, and that's bad.
Yes.
And I don't want to, and I'm improving, but I cannot say a lot of things about this, so this is as much as I can explain.
Let me give you a hug. Thank you. Thank you. That was really courageous. Yeah. And you know what we're all trying to do tonight? We're all here to help that issue, to help you and to help that issue, to be in support of you, right? Because we're dealing with it, we're going to deal with it in a different way, right? Because we know that despite our best efforts, despite even some state-mandated programs that are in schools, bullying has increased since we started tracking it in 2003 by 21%. And we've heard tonight that it's a big issue. This is despite our best efforts, by the way, guys, right? We have more suicides in the US than murders. We know that substance abuse is skyrocketing, and we have a lot more violence that's happening in our school, that's escalating. Despite our best efforts, because it's not like we're not trying, right? I mean, nobody wants us to go on, but there is something that we can do. And we're going to be part of the solution here tonight, together. I was in Arkansas over the summer at a school counseling conference, and there was an FBI director of drug enforcement that was there saying, well, we're losing the war on drugs. And that's why I'm here to talk to you about this. We can't arrest our way out of this issue. We realize that now. So what we're doing is we're reaching out to you folks and we're asking for help. And I was like, holy moly. Oh, okay. That's not good news. But then his counterpart got up and said something that blew me away. Woo, fireworks. The opposite of addiction is connection, and connection is love. Connection is having healthy and positive relationships, right? And I learned that connection is love by little kids, because I go around the world talking to educators and kids, and I love speaking to little kids because they're just honest, right? They're not programmed. They don't care really what people think. They're just going to blurt out the truth. And I say to them, so guys, tell me, what does anger sound like? What does it feel like in your body, right? And they go, blah, headache, inferno, fire, right? And then I say, what does love look like? Now, they've been led into an auditorium. They're not necessarily sitting next to their best friend. They go like this immediately without even thinking about it. Put their arms around one another. Or if they're sitting across from desks, they go like this. They try to touch. And I'm like, holy moly, love is connection, right? The opposite of addiction is connection, and connection is love. We're all connected. We're all connected by the want and need to love and be loved. In fact, a lot of what we're seeing in our society is simply from lack of love. We don't realize that love is a choice that we make for ourselves. We're wired to connect. We actually have mirror neurons in our brains that make us wired to connect. So that means, like, if I smile at you, you smile back, right? And conversely, if I frown, oh, that's a good frown face, but you couldn't hold it for very long. But even if you didn't want to smile at me, even if you did your very best not to, you would have muscles in your face that would respond to me, because we are wired to connect. We have to connect as human beings, and connection is love, right? That's the number one most important thing. Harvard University did a 75-year longitudinal study. That means that they did it several times over. They wanted to know, what's the secret of happiness? By the way, that's another thing that connects us all as human beings. We all just want to be happy and feel good, right? They found that the secret to happiness is healthy relationships, is connection, right? It's not surprising, but it's pretty powerful. And by the way, we can learn how to have healthy connections and healthy relationships. Social emotional learning, which is what I'm talking about, emotional intelligence, these are not innate qualities in us, believe it or not. You would think maybe they would be, but they're not. We have to learn how to get along with one another, right? And unless you had a fantastic role model and they had some skills and tools that they got from somewhere, you don't have them. And I can say that because the more I learned about social, emotional, and emotional intelligence, the more I realized I didn't have these skills and tools. By the way, outwardly, relatively successful, right? But not really inwardly, and certainly not in relationships, where it really counts, the secret to happiness, right? So, all this stuff that's going on, all these issues, right? I was Debbie Downer for a while. Now I'm gonna start going into the solution and how we can be part of it. Who do we blame? Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it for what's going on? Who can we blame?
All of us.
All of us. Well, you know, I think about my situation. Who are the obvious people that we would blame in my situation, right? With losing my son. Well, it would be Adam Lanza, who was the shooter. He was the perpetrator. And his mom, who gave him the guns, right? I mean, that's the obvious person to blame, right? I thought about that because I watched as that was happening. And I thought about it. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we really could blame them? Because then, if it really was their fault, it would never have happened before, and it would never happen again. But wait a minute. We've had over 220 school-related shootings since Sandy Hook Elementary. Does that mean that that's their fault too? Well, it can't be. So whose fault is it? Well, I decided that I had to take my part of the responsibility for what's going on in our world, right? Because Adam Lanza was born a perfect child of God, just like you and me. He wasn't born a mass murderer, right? Does everybody agree with that? He was born a perfect child of God. He was cultivated into what he became by his environment. Who was his environment? Me. Were you going to say something? True, absolutely. His family, his school, his community. I was in his community, right? I lived in Sandy Hook for 16 years before that happened. Now, did we ever cross paths physically? I don't think so. It doesn't matter. Remember, I was talking about our thoughts, which impact our feelings, which impact our actions earlier. There's a ripple effect, and there's science behind this, that we can impact thousands of people with just our thoughts, which impact our feelings, which impact our behavior. We impact thousands of people. Want to see how that looks like? You get up in the morning, right? You could get up now. You get up. Give me a hug. Yay. That's my cheap way of getting a hug from you. Thank you. So you get up and you smile at me, you give me a hug. I laugh. Everyone laughs here, right? We all feel good about that. We all go home and we give our kids a hug, right? And then the kids get up the next day in a good mood. They go to school and they're smiling. Do you see how the ripple effect happens? It's really powerful, and it's really true. There's science behind it. That's how we ripple effect. And that's, I knew that there's a ripple effect on the opposite end of that too. Any decision that we make that's not so good, anytime we're angry, that also has a ripple effect, right? So I knew that I know especially now since traveling around the world, that my thoughts, which create my feelings, which create my actions, they ripple out to a lot of people. I'm powerful, just like all of you. No more powerful than every one of you. And so I knew that I had my part of the responsibility. I had to take my part of the responsibility in order to be part of the solution, right? What if I blamed you for having a bad day? It's your fault because I'm having a bad day. You'd be like, what? He's like, what? Well, if I blame you for something, then I'm giving you all the responsibility for my day. And you're the only one that can make me have a better day. Do I want to do that? Because sometimes you don't even know if you gave me a bad day, right? That's called personal responsibility, right? And I knew I had to take it to be part of the solution, to control my life and be part of the solution. So we're the ones that are going to fix this, because that's the main question, right? Not who's to blame, not whose fault is it, right? But who's going to fix it? Who's going to fix it? And then so I say, well, is our president going to fix it? Sometimes people laugh, right? No. Well, did our past president fix it? Did he mitigate any of those issues that were on that board? Did he mitigate them? Did he lessen them at all?
No, but yes, but that's not his problem. It's the person's problem.
Well, and he tried, but there was nothing that he could do, right? Are our congressmen and legislation going to help? Actually, you guys, I want you to help. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try to help, okay? I'm just saying that we're going to be the ones that fix this issue. We're going to be the ones in this room. You know the Margaret Mead quote, "Never doubt that a small group of dedicated and committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." We're going to be it. Sorry, guys, you were called to come. And you came, and you're it. We're going to do it in this room. We can do it. We have to. Yes, right. You guys are going to do it, the kids. Yes, I'm getting this from the back. Look at the kids. Yes, right? I love it. Love it. Love that energy. Thank you. So, to be part of the solution, I worked with dedicated educators, and we created a social emotional learning program. I looked at the programming that was in schools. I looked at what wasn't effective, right? Wasn't effective data-wise, and I looked at what was. There are lots of great programs out there that are working. They're wonderful. They change people's lives. We took all the best of the best, all of the best of the best, and we put it into one program. Here's an educator right here that actually uses it, in Prairie Elementary, right? And she's shaking her head yes. We took the best of the best and we added love, bringing love into a school in an intentional way. Love's already there. Educators do what they do because they love kids. Administrators love their kids. This is bringing love in a slightly different way. It's using props. It's using vocabulary. It's setting the intention for choosing love as a choice, because it's a choice, right? This program's the only one written by educators for educators. It's easy to teach, easy to learn. The educator, by the way, learns right alongside the student. No teacher prep, no teacher training. We focus on all the benefits, and it's a lot of fun. And key thing is, it's free. Remember, it's my mission in life to make sure that every child has access to social emotional learning. Remember, the key to happiness is connection, healthy relationships. That's what our program teaches. That should be our tagline. The secret to happiness. Choose love. So we also have a parent program, so parents can choose love alongside their kids. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about what social emotional learning is. We know what it is because I told you that it's helping to manage emotions, it's having positive and healthy relationships, it's coping skills, right? And I told you about all this research about what the benefits are, why I think it is the solution to the issues that we're seeing today. Decades of research. It's been around for a while. Kids that have social emotional learning get better grades and test scores right off the bat. Right? Absolutely. Okay. They have, obviously they get along better, right? They have higher graduation rates, better attendance rates, less emotional distress, better classroom and school climate, less stress and anxiety, less behavioral issues, less bullying. It's proactive and preventative. It doesn't go in and focus on an issue, right? It doesn't tell kids this is what you can't do to feel good. It says, this is what you can do to feel good. It's proactive and preventative. A little bit different way of thinking. There are long-term research now that has followed kids from kindergarten all the way through adulthood that have had social emotional learning. The benefits that they have are reduced substance abuse, reduced mental illness of all kinds, less incarceration, less violence and anger, even less divorce rates. It kind of makes sense, right? Because you're getting along better. Really, really, really powerful. There are also economic implications. For every $1 invested in social emotional learning, there's an $11 present value return to the community. Here's just a little, I talk about all this research. I just wanted to give an actual research report for the parents more. This study came out in December 2016. It followed 800 children over 20 years and studied their social competency score in kindergarten. This is how powerful social emotional learning is. For every 1 point increase in a child's social competency score in kindergarten, they were twice as likely to obtain a college degree and 46% more likely to have a full-time job by the age of 25. Conversely, for every 1 point decrease in a child's social skills score in kindergarten, he or she had a 67% higher chance of having been arrested in early adulthood, a 52% higher rate of binge drinking, and an 82% higher chance of being in or on a waiting list for public housing. I had to share that. It's so powerful. What's the takeaway for us? The takeaway is that it's highly teachable at any age, but it has significant impact on our future. It is the solution. So our program's been downloaded in the past year in 47 states and 20 countries. This is a little classroom in Malawi. How can it be taught in a little classroom in Malawi, in Australia, in Germany, in other countries in Africa, and here? Because it talks about love and the choice of love. We're all united by the want and need to love and be loved. That is beautiful, because guess what? That's all a choice, isn't it? I love that. Thank you for that. That's choosing love. Choosing to be kind, choosing to be loving, choosing to be respectful. Choosing to be loyal and trusting. I want you to work for the Choose Love movement. Awesome. We'll talk afterwards. So here's some results that we've had from our program. 100% of the educators saw an improvement in classroom climate and in their students' overall behavior. More than 90% said their students got along better. More than 90% said their students have a more positive attitude. More than 76% saw an increase in academic performance. I call those rock star results. How could they be so good? Because we include love and we empower kids with the ability to choose it for themselves. Guess what? We all just want to feel good, right? We really all just want to feel good. Love feels good. Anger feels bad, right? And if we understand that we can choose love, it feels good. It's pretty easy. What do we know? All human beings need connection and love. We all want to belong. Kids, this is you guys, but it's also us adults too, right? Isn't it? Everyone in this room, we all want to belong. And we all want to feel good. And we're going to find a way to do this. And we're going to do it, kids and adults, by the way. There's not a whole lot of difference. Through anger, bullying, violence, drugs, gangs, even terrorist organizations. A lot of people join terrorist organizations because they don't feel connection, right? And by the way, anger kind of feels good sometimes, doesn't it? That self-righteousness, the self-righteous indignation, you get a hit of adrenaline, right? And it's just temporary, because really anger is as bad for you as smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Did you know that? It's crazy, right? Or we can feel good through having positive relationships, learning how to manage our emotions, and choosing love. And we have a choice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Jesse, because he's the reason that I'm here, okay? I'm going to introduce you to him. Jesse, I like to introduce him this way, and if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say this. Jesse was born 11 pounds. That's a big baby.
That's a very big baby.
How much did you weigh when you were born?
I know how much my baby brother
How, what did your baby?
7 pounds.
7 pounds. Yeah, that's an average baby, right? That's a good weight too. I remember walking down with another mother, and she had a 7-pounder, and I had an 11-pounder, and I was like, oh, that's such a sweet little baby, right? Because mine was like 3 months old when it came out. The first time I saw Jesse, it was a C-section, so I was walking up to the nursery, and all these nurses were gathered around the window. And I walked up, and they were taking pictures. And I walked up behind them, and I said, what are you taking pictures of? And they said, there's this enormous baby, and he's trying to crawl out of his bassinet. And he had literally crawled down to the bottom of it, and he was trying to crawl out. So that gives you a good idea of his energy and his zest for life that never changed, right? That's a picture of Jesse on our farm on his 6th birthday, having pony rides. And here's a picture of him. Jesse loved 2 things, little yellow ducks and army men. So when we were thinking of logos for the foundation, knowing we wanted to work in schools, we thought, army men, yellow ducks. Yellow ducks won out. But this is an army helmet. This is kind of an iconic photo that kind of was spread around after the tragedy. And this was an army helmet that one of my dear friends gave him 6 months before he died. He refused to take it off. He slept in it. He wanted to wear it to school, but I would peel it off his sweaty head in the morning and not let him. He'd come back home and put it back on. And I felt like there was a little bit of a spiritual awareness that he was gearing up for his mission, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Here's the ACEs study, where we see early childhood adverse events and how they impact children. And I told you before that there was a study in Connecticut that showed that over 50% of kids were coming to school having experienced a recent traumatic event, right? And I'm going to give you a little bit of a different perspective on trauma. So, and the kids, I don't know if you guys have already heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. Have you guys heard of that? No? That's good. But we've all heard of it. Is there anybody that hasn't heard of it? I've started saying that instead of who's heard of it. Everybody raises their hand. Who hasn't heard of PTSD? Everybody's heard of it, right? So let me ask you this question. Who's heard of PTG, post-traumatic growth? That's okay, because I talk all around the world, even at mental health conferences. Okay, thank you. And no one's ever heard of it. Post-traumatic growth. Here's the interesting thing about this, okay? So research, the numbers say that 8% of us will suffer from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, at some point in our lives. 8% of us will suffer from PTSD at some point in our lives, right? But the vast majority of us experience something called post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth is when you simply grow from a trauma, right? We've all had obstacles. You know, we all had bumps in the road. We've all experienced pain and suffering. PTG is when you grow from that experience, right? When you find strength you never knew you had, when you strengthen relationships, when you weed out weak ones, when you gain a new perspective, when you deepen your spirituality, when you find a new perspective, when you gain a purpose in life.
How to explain this is like you are a wilting flower from this traumatic experience, but then a few minutes later you can feel like you're growing from this and you're becoming a brand new flower, becoming a new kind of way.
Wow, that's a beautiful, beautiful imagery of PTG. You feel like you're a wilting flower when you're going through your experience, right? We've all felt like wilting flowers, right? But then post-traumatic growth is when you start getting strengthened, when your flower and your beauty comes back. That's post-traumatic growth. That was beautiful. Thank you for that. That's really nice. Can I use that? Thank you. So post-traumatic growth, it's really important that we understand this so that we can have this perspective on how the obstacles that we know that we're going to face in life and we know our children are going to face in life, how we can help them understand that these shape and mold them into the people that they're going to be, that they're not necessarily something that you have to fear, they're not something that you avoid or resist, but there's something that you face and you ask yourself, what are the lessons in here for me? Right? Post-traumatic growth. What are the lessons in here for me? You can even use this knowledge now and go back in your life in things that have happened and think, how did I grow from that? How can I take that event now and grow from it as an adult? It's really, really powerful. Here's some examples of PTG for all of us. So how is a pearl formed, right? A pearl is formed by a little grain of sand or a little piece of bacteria that gets into an oyster shell, and it irritates the tissues around it that release a mucousy substance, and they coat that irritant. And that process continues until there's a beautiful pearl. That's how pearls form, by irritation. How do you get big muscles? Like Sylvester Stallone. How do you get big muscles? You have to rip and tear them before the muscles grow, right? These are real life examples of post-traumatic growth. Now, you're probably thinking, who cares? Maybe, maybe not. But you're thinking, well, you're telling me that I experienced this, right? And so if I experience it, why do I need to know about it? And by the way, why do I know about PTSD when so few people suffer from it? And why don't I know about PTG when there's a good chance that everybody in here has experienced it? Well, one fact is that we have a negative bias in our society. And just to prove that, look at the news, right? And this is why. So if you picture two cavemen sitting in front of a cave, right? One is totally zenned out, right, meditating, and the other is over here scanning for a saber-toothed tiger. Who's going to live to pass down his genes? Who's going to live?
The person scanning for the saber-toothed tiger.
The scanner, right? The scanner's going to live to pass down his genes. Well, we have a little bit of that scanner in us still. We're literally scanning for danger all the time. We don't even realize it, right? We want to know what the danger is. Even though there are no saber-toothed tigers, are there in zoos? No, not anymore, right? So we don't really need to scan for saber-toothed tigers, right? There's danger, we need to be aware, but not like there was, right? And so that's our negative bias. That's a holdover, right? But in reality, we don't need to scan for danger, right? We can focus on what's good, and that's post-traumatic growth. I'm going to talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. This is really interesting. Emotional intelligence is so important. What is it? It's being able to label and manage your emotions, right? Do you ever have times when you kind of get out of control a little bit? You get angry and it escalates? Yes. Yeah, honesty right here. Me too, by the way. But it's really important to be able to label and manage your emotions. Yes, agreement here. Thank you very much. So actually, this is interesting. This is a slide from Dr. Brené Brown. She's a relatively famous, very famous, researcher out of the University of Texas. And she did this groundbreaking study on emotional intelligence, right? She researched thousands of people across the United States to find out how emotionally intelligent we are, right? So to be considered relatively emotionally intelligent, you need to be able to label 30 emotions. 30 emotions. So she did this study over thousands of people, and guess how many the majority of adults could label? Does anybody want to guess? 5?
10.
10?
About
50? 15? Label, like identify. Just be able to label, just name them. Right, just name them. How many do you think? At least 50, right? Because 30 is like relatively emotionally intelligent. You think people would be able to label 50, right? Yeah. Guess how many they could label? 3. Happy, sad, pissed. The majority of people, okay? Now, why is that important? Why is that? Why do we need to be able to label emotions? Why do we need to know what they are? This is a really good example, okay? I'm going to talk about anger. Does everybody feel angry sometimes? All the time? Yeah, okay. We're going to try to help you with that, buddy. Anger. We all feel anger, right? Anger is an emotion. It's totally normal. There's no judgment here, by the way. Sometimes anger can be good because it can be a catalyst for positive change, right? Okay. But let's look at this. Anger is like an iceberg, okay? So you see this. Anger is like an iceberg. Anger is what we see. We see anger. You can see when somebody's angry, right? Oh, that's good. I see that you're looking angry. Woo! All right. That's what we see. Anger is the tip of the iceberg, right? But there's always an underlying feeling below anger. Anger never happens in a vacuum. It never happens by itself. There's always an underlying feeling, okay? We need to know what that underlying feeling is in order to manage our emotions. So here, remember I told you that I was not very emotionally intelligent? So I'll tell you what I did. So if my boys came up to me, angry, right? Like that, yep. You know what? Mirror neurons, you know, we kind of pick up what the other person is feeling. I would get angry. And I would say, you're angry? Go to your room and have a timeout, right? Because I didn't know what he was feeling. I didn't know that anger was based on an underlying feeling. I didn't know. I just knew that I wanted him to stop being angry, right? Now, here's a list of, and this is really hard to read, I'm sorry because they're in white, but here's a list of underlying feelings that can create anger. So what I could have said, if I had been more emotionally intelligent, what I could have said was, hey, I see that you're angry. What are you feeling? Are you feeling scared about something? Are you overwhelmed? Are you hurt? Are you anxious about something? Are you feeling lonely? Do you see what I mean? And if you said, yeah, I'm feeling lonely, I could have helped you with that, right? But instead, I punish you by sending you to your room. That doesn't help you understand your anger, and it doesn't help you deal with it, right? So when we know that most adults, and so I don't really have to feel bad about this because I'm in with everybody else, can label 3 emotions, no wonder we have an anger issue in our country, right? Because people are just feeling angry, but they don't know what's underneath that anger, right? Now, by the way, this one simple little lesson is going to change your life. It's going to completely change your life. You know how? Because the next time your really good friend or a spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend is angry, you're going to go, I see that you're angry. I wonder what the underlying feeling is for that, right? Do you see how that de-escalates though? Really? It really de-escalates. Instead of escalating with knowledge, you're de-escalating. You're taking the personal affront out of that situation. You're saying, I see the anger. I wonder what the feeling is, right? That's what knowledge can do. That's what emotional intelligence can do. This was the last time that I saw Jesse. So it was that morning, started off like any other morning, right? Running late. And so I walked Jesse out to the end of the driveway, who's going to meet his dad to take him to school. And I always practice being present, by the way. You know, being present and in the moment. I worked long hours as a single mom. So I left at 7 in the morning. I came home at 7 at night. Like, my kids went to one daycare because it opened early, and then they were bused to another daycare because it closed late. I wanted to be with my kids. I wanted to be present with them. So, in fact, I was so freakish about it, we didn't have a TV. My poor kids, right? My poor kids. We still don't have a TV. Because I just wanted to be present with them. Being present means not being worried or concerned about the past. It means not planning or being anxious for the future. It means being right here, right now, just enjoying the present moment, like I'm trying to do with you guys, right? Being present. So practicing that presence, I walked out to the car, and I turned around to give him a hug, and I noticed that he had written something on the side of my car with his little fingernail in the frost. He wrote, "I love you," and he drew hearts in all the windows. And I knew that that was one of life's moments, right? So even though I was running a little late, I said, hold on, right there. I'm going to run in, get my cell phone, which is now our camera. And I remember positioning him by that message, taking a picture. I actually deleted one because you can see it's a little overexposed. But because I was present, I got a picture of my goodbye message. And by the way, here's a little hint about not having any regrets in your life. It's practicing being present. Because I have very few regrets with Jesse. He knew I was with him every moment of his life, every moment that I could, that was physically possible. And to give you a little idea of his personality, you know the goofy teeth that you wear on Halloween? Right? That you stick in, the goofy teeth? He was wearing those. It's hard to tell, but he wore them every day. He's the kid that came to school in those teeth, right? That gives you a little idea about his personality. So Jesse was actually considered a hero on December 14th. Jesse used his last few moments on this earth to save 9 of his classmates' lives. So when the gunman came into his room, he ran out of bullets. And while he was changing his clip, Jesse took that time, the delay, sensing the delay, called out to his friends to run. They said that it's because he gave them that direction that they ran, and he was able to save 9 of his classmates' lives. For that act of courage, he was given a commander-in-chief funeral. A commander-in-chief funeral is reserved for heads of state and returning war heroes. Jesse was considered a war hero because his classroom was a war zone. I talk about that courage because that is the same courage that we all have within us. We all have the courage that Jesse showed on that day. And by the way, that courage is not what we're bombarded with in the media, on TV, in video games. It's not the big tough guy with the gun, right? That's not courage. You were talking about courage. You were talking about choosing love. It takes courage to choose love in every situation.
It takes lots of caring and speaking up and being yourself, love other people to choose that choice and to be who you are. And it's very good to be that way.
So good. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to be vulnerable. It takes so much courage to actually be yourself. Let yourself be known, right? It takes courage to be kind, especially when someone isn't kind to you. It takes courage to tell the truth. It takes courage to do the right thing, even when nobody's looking. And by the way, kids, this is for you. It's also for all the adults. We run into the same issues that you do on a daily basis, and it takes a tremendous amount of courage. But we all have the courage that Jesse showed. We all have we're all such courageous human beings. I didn't realize it, right? But I realized it through Jesse. I bet, did any of you guys wake up this morning going, oh, I'm so courageous. I could change the world. Did you? Yes. That is so awesome. I believe that you did, right?
I am just the person of love, care, and everything I need.
That is so beautiful. I love you. Yes. So Jesse wrote a message on our kitchen chalkboard shortly before he died. I found it after he died. He wrote 3 words: nurturing, healing, love. Now, those 3 words aren't in the vernacular of a 6-year-old. They're not something a 6-year-old would normally say. They were phonetically spelled because he was in 1st grade and just learning to write. But I downloaded so much information from that message. I knew, first of all, that if Adam Lanza, the shooter, had been able to give and receive nurturing, healing love, that the tragedy would never have happened, right? And in that way, I was able to start my forgiveness process. I also knew that that was a message of comfort for his family and friends, that he had a spiritual awareness that he wasn't going to be around for very much longer. But I also saw it as something that was an urge for us all to do. I knew that it would be my mission in life. I knew I would be spending the rest of my life spreading this message of nurturing, healing love, because I knew it was where we needed to turn in order to survive and thrive. And actually, I had the director of the Compassion, Creativity, and Innovation Center at Western Connecticut State University, Dr. Chris Cook, come over, take a look at this. He did some research. He called me the next day and he said, those 3 words are in the definition of compassion across all cultures. And together we broke down the meaning of those words, and we found that they comprise a powerful and profound formula for choosing love in any situation or circumstance. Of course, everything starts with courage, and that's Jesse's example of courage, the same courage that we all have within us. Nurturing means loving kindness and gratitude. Healing literally means forgiveness, and love is compassion in action. When you have the courage to practice those 3 character values neuroscientifically in that order, and I'm pretty sure Jesse didn't realize that at 6 years old, you're choosing love. We're going to go through this just a little bit so that you guys all have this tool that you can use to choose love in your life. We're going to do it a little bit quickly. Like my mom calls this a rope. It's like a rope that you can put down to yourself in any type of situation. If you're having a hard time, right? And you're looking up and you're wanting to pull yourself out of this situation, that takes courage in itself, right? Reaching up to grab the rope, what's the first thing that you would do? You would think of something to be grateful for. You know the 60 to 80,000 thoughts that everybody has that goes through their head on a daily basis, single file? You can't have 2 thoughts at once. You can't have an angry thought and a grateful thought. It just can't happen. I had the kids try it today. They were all like, oh. nope, you can't do it. So the great mood shifter, right? Thinking of something to be grateful for, and there's always something to be grateful for. That actually neuroscientifically strengthens you to contemplate forgiveness for yourself and others. That's exactly right. I love that. Everyone should do this every day. Let's all pledge to do this every day, right? Choose love. Absolutely. Then, once you've forgiven, that actually strengthens you to look outside your own pain, to find meaning in your suffering, and to help someone else. And by the way, once you've done that, you turn around and you're outside of the hole, right? And you've chosen love. So let's go through this formula, right? The definition of courage is the willingness and ability to walk through obstacles despite feeling embarrassment, fear, reluctance, or uncertainty. Remember I said there was science behind choosing love? Remember the choose love dude guy? If he's watching. Well, look at all the science behind this. When you mindfully practice courage, and remember, we actually do this every single day, we're just not aware of it. We all have big and small acts of courage that we do every single day, right? We're just not aware of it. What happens when you mindfully practice courage? Courage is confidence. These are all, by the way, research. You can see all the little citations. It enables us to be upstanders rather than bystanders that stand by and watch something bad happen. It makes us feel good. It helps us in mastering the emotions that we talked about. It helps us overcome fear. It helps to counter bullying. There's research that shows that when you have the courage to stand up to bullying behavior, that behavior stops within 10 seconds. And we've seen that to be true in the program, which is really exciting. Gratitude is mindful thankfulness and the ability to be thankful even when things in life are challenging. Does it take courage to be grateful when everything's going your way? Yes. You think it does? Everything's going your way. You got your favorite present, you're surrounded by your friends, and you get to watch your favorite movie. Does that take courage to be grateful? No. Not really, right? But what if you don't have all those things and you're having a really kind of bad day? Does it take courage to think of something to be grateful for then? Yes. Yeah. That's when gratitude really kicks in, right? Look at all the benefits of practicing mindful gratefulness, guys. Look at this. I'm not going to go, these are all scientifically researched. Emotionally, socially, career-wise, health-wise. By the way, it strengthens your immune system. It elongates your life. It has to be powerful for that. Kids probably don't really care about that at this point. We do, though, right? Personality-wise, look what it all leads to. Greater happiness. This is just gratitude, by the way. This is the second component of the formula for choosing love. In daily life, we must see that it is not happiness that makes us grateful, but gratefulness that makes us happy. Forgiveness. Oh my gosh. When people pay me to speak, I say, don't talk about forgiveness in the title or anywhere because you'll have very few people that come. We don't really understand it. We don't talk about it. We don't learn about it. Yeah, we hear about forgiveness in the church, but do they talk about the benefits of forgiveness to us and how to do it and what it really means? I didn't learn that in church. I learned that you should forgive, right? But I had to learn myself what forgiveness really meant to me, and I'm going to talk about that. Forgiveness means to choosing to let go of anger and resentment towards yourself or someone else, to surrender thoughts of revenge, and to move forward with your personal power intact. Forgiveness is the key to resilience. We know this through science, right? Yes?
We can always feel forgiveness for the people that we hate. Even if we hate them, we have to love them back.
You know what? I want to be your perspective for that, right? Because I forgave the man who murdered my 6-year-old son. If I can forgive that, and I'm going to tell you all the things that it did for me, then we can certainly consider forgiveness in our own lives for lesser offenses, right? It is something that we constantly have to work on. It's not that I don't continue to work on it. In fact, the first talk I ever gave was to at-risk youth. Huge room, right? They asked me to talk about forgiveness. And so I'm sitting there kind of talking about what the definition of forgiveness is. And this guy in the back row, he raises his hand, tough guy. He goes, "What is forgiveness?" And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing a great job. I said, let me explain. I'm going to show you what it meant to me. I said, I felt like I was connected to the shooter with an umbilical cord. You know how you have an umbilical cord that you're connected to your mom with? Well, I felt like it was coming out of my side into the side of the shooter. And all of my personal power was draining out of me in the form of anger through this cord and into the shooter. I was attached to him. He was dead. It didn't matter in my mind. I was giving my personal power to him because I was dragging him around with me everywhere. He had control over me. He had control over my thoughts that create my feelings that impact my actions, right? Forgiveness to me was just a choice. It was a big set of scissors. I took those scissors, I cut that cord that attached me to the person that had hurt me, and I felt all of my personal power run back into me, right? That was the first stage of forgiveness. The guy in the back's going, "How long did it take you to do that?" And I said, "That's a really great question, because I did that relatively quickly. I knew instinctively that somebody that could do something so heinous must have been in a tremendous amount of pain. I found out a little bit about his life, and I found out that he had actually cried out for help, and he had not received it. And in that way, I could feel compassion for him, right? But it doesn't mean that I didn't fall back into anger, because think about Jesse's 7th birthday, 6 months later. I remember getting up that morning thinking, Jesse should be with me. I should be celebrating my son's 7th birthday, and he's not here. I felt a seething, tremendous amount of anger. Does that mean that I failed in forgiveness? No, it just means that I had to take a deep breath, take a step back, and forgive again. Because forgiveness starts with a choice. It starts with those scissors. It starts with that decision. I'm going to cut the cord that is attaching me to pain. I'm going to refuse to give away my personal power to somebody else anymore. I'm taking that back. But then it becomes a process. And actually, we're in a church. Jesus talked about that, right? Jesus talked about Matthew, at one point in the Bible, asked Jesus, "Lord, how many times do I have to forgive?" And Jesus said, 70 times 7, right? I remember being in Bible school, by the way, when I was little, and I heard that, and I thought, this is me, 70 times 7, 70 times 7, 490. Okay, so I'm going to forgive. If I forgive 490 times in my life, I'm good. I can do that, and I'm going to keep track. I really did. I thought that, right? I'm competitive. And it sounds kind of strange, kind of weird, but it wasn't until after Jesse died that I realized what Jesus meant. He meant forgiveness is a continuous process, right? You can't fail. You start with a choice, and then it's a continuous process that we have to work on over and over and over again. I've had to forgive over and over and over again. You can't fail at forgiveness. You just forgive again. It's a process. It's a beautiful thing. It's very empowering. And let's look at what science says about forgiveness, right? What does science say about it? There's so much research, decades of research now on the benefits of forgiveness for ourselves. When we forgive, we have healthier relationships. We have less anger. We have less anxiety, stress, and hostility, lower blood pressure, fewer symptoms of depression, a stronger immune system, higher self-esteem. Oh my gosh, it extends your lifespan. That has to be pretty powerful when it extends your lifespan, right? That's forgiveness, the power of forgiveness. Taking your personal power back, cutting the cord that attaches you to pain. That's forgiveness. Our last character value and the formula for choosing love is compassion in action. Compassion has two components. Compassion has an empathetic component when you identify with someone's pain, and an action component. So did anybody feel the empathetic component tonight when I'm talking about Jesse? Did anybody empathize with me, feel my pain? How does that feel? How'd that feel?
Felt very sad.
Very sad. Anybody else?
Very sad and kind of really hurts you, but it kind of lifts you up to make you feel good and make you feel happy.
Happy in the end, but sad in the beginning, right? Like yep, I get that, totally, right? Empathy is painful. Empathy lights up the same receptors in the brain as physical pain, right? There's that identifying, but we can only feel somebody's pain for so long, and then we have to turn away. The second part of compassion is the action component, and the action component is the miraculous component. That's when all the nurturing, healing love that we give out comes back to us. The best example of this is my 12-year-old son, JT. So JT lost his little brother, right? And he was very angry, and he refused to go back to school. And he punched a hole in his wall. And I really felt like I couldn't help him. But we had this miraculous experience where orphan genocide survivors from Rwanda reached out to him, right? Via live Skype, there was an interpreter, and they said, I'll never forget this, from halfway around the world, JT, we heard about what happened to your little brother all the way over here in Rwanda. We just wanted to let you know how sorry we are. We wanted to let you know that we wanted to share our experience because they'd been through a genocide, right? In 1994, where over 1 million Tutsis were murdered by their neighboring Hutus within 100 days. These now young adults had watched their families be killed. They'd been through something worse than us, right? And they said, we want you to know that you're gonna be okay and you're gonna feel joy again. Wow, they had credibility in our eyes. We wanted to listen. So they started telling him how they got through their scenario. And by the way, it was the same formula that Jesse left on the kitchen chalkboard. Once they got into an orphanage, they started feeling a profound sense of gratitude for the walls that were giving them protection, for the little amount of food, the compassion they were receiving. And then they realized that actually strengthened them, as it does neuroscientifically, to forgive. They knew that if they didn't forgive, they call them the killers, that they might go down the same path of anger and destruction. Then once they forgave, that gave them the ability to find meaning in their suffering by reaching out to others with their story and helping them, like they were with JT, right? JT, afterwards, we're talking about it, we're realizing, wow, we have a lot to be grateful for still, right? We have our farm, we have our family, we have each other. And then we both made the conscious decision to forgive. And then JT, I saw him writing in a journal. I said, what are you writing? And he said, those kids reached out to me in love, and I'm gonna reach back out to them, and I'm gonna raise money to send them to university. And he turned around and went to school the next day and started an organization called NewtownHelpsRwanda.org. And he raised enough money within a few months to send one of the orphan genocide survivors to university for 1 year. Now, by the way, they would never be anything but subsistence farmers with no running water, no electricity. He got to make that announcement, and he got to feel that feeling when you do something so profound for someone, even though they're halfway across the world. Here's the organization that he started. And I thought, as a parent, oh gosh, when's he gonna stop this? Because when you're grieving every little thing that you do, it takes so much more effort, right? He didn't. He kept going. He built self-sustaining fish ponds for former children soldiers in Uganda. He's helped countless severely traumatized kids in America. He's still going today. He just sent, in fact, we went to visit them in Rwanda, and this is Matthew, one of the original orphan genocide survivors that reached out to JT. And JT's now sending Matthew to graduate school in India for the 2nd year. And I thought, wow, this is an incredible example, because what's happening is that JT is healing himself by being in service to others. By watching this, I realized it is more powerful than any trauma treatment or pill that you could take. It's called being in service to others. And guess what? All the love, I say all the nurturing, healing love that you give out, you get back to you. Let's see what science says about this. What are the benefits of doing for others, right? These are all cited, by the way. Giving makes us happy. It releases oxytocin and other feel-good neurochemicals that mimic a runner's high. When we do for others, it's good for our general health and well-being. It promotes cooperation, social and relationship skills, cultivates social connection, is love, right? It evokes gratitude. It's contagious, creates that ripple effect that we were talking about. Other people want to start doing it. It counteracts depression, anger, and anxiety, reduces and relieves stress, increases self-confidence. It gives us a sense of purpose, better physical and emotional pain management, and oh my gosh, adds years to your life. Studies show that when you do for others, you have a 22% less chance of dying. Wow, that's incredible, isn't it? So I kind of say, like, if you choose love, you're gonna live forever, right? So it's this ripple effect. There's science behind the ripple effect that I talked about before, that every little thought that we have that produces a feeling that results in an action can impact thousands of people. Remember in the beginning I said, who's going to fix this? Who's going to fix this? We are. We're going to fix this by every thought that goes through our head that creates a feeling, every action, right? We're going to be the change that we wish to see in the world, because when we do it in ourselves, we can't control somebody else. We can't control what somebody else does. We can control what we do, and we can choose love, right? And that is so incredibly powerful. So this isn't rocket science, but it is science. JT and I visited a prison, and we talked to the prisoners about choosing love, and all of them chose love, because it doesn't matter who you are, or where you are in the world, or what your status is, right? We all want to love and be loved. So Jesse left a final message, and then I'm going to wrap it up, and I'm going to turn it over to you guys. This message JT found on his desk the same day that I found the message on the kitchen chalkboard, Nurturing Healing Love. JT went into his room and he found this little note that was on his desk. It was all folded up. And he looked at it, and Jesse had written a note to him that said, have a lot of fun. Now how beautiful, what a beautiful message from a little brother to a big brother, right? And but when I saw that, I thought, wow, that's for all of us. Because what's the most important thing that we do on a daily basis? It's choosing love in all of our decisions, right? And it's also having a lot of fun. Because, I mean, why else are we here? We want to have fun. Our kids want to have fun. Do you want to have fun? Do you want to have fun? Yes. Where are my other little kitties? Do you want to have fun? Do you guys want to have fun? Guess what? So do we. Do you want to have fun? You look like I did when I was little. So cute. We all want to have fun, right? So I thought, what a beautiful message from a little brother to a big brother, but also for all of us. That's why I spread that. We tried to infuse our program with it, because while you're choosing love, you can have a lot of fun, right? So I want to leave you with that. And I came up with this slide just for you guys. How kids and parents can choose love every day. Remember, we all have Jesse's courage that he showed on that day. We all have that courage. Everything starts with a thought in our head, and a thought can be changed. We can choose love. Remember, life doesn't happen to you. Your power lies in how you choose to respond to life. Being present is a really great way to have very few regrets. And live the formula. I live the formula. I live the formula for choosing love every single day. I practice mindful courage. I practice gratitude. I practice forgiveness every single day. I work on it, right? And I step outside of my own pain to help other people. That is choosing love. That works. That's the most powerful thing that we can do. That's how we can be part of the solution, right? Is choosing love and have a lot of fun. That's how we can choose love every day. So I'm going to invite you, parents and kids, to choose love with me, to join the movement to choose love, spread the message. Remember, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. That's a Margaret Mead quote. So help me change the world. Let's us change the world together. Everybody in here, you were called to be here. You knew there was a reason that you showed up, and it's so that you could change the world. This is really exciting, right? So thank you very much.